Have you ever wondered what happens in hospitals in the middle of the night, when the hallways are empty and only a few staff members are on duty? Today I'm going to share 3 true accounts from employees who worked in Brazilian hospitals. These are documented stories that will make you question everything. Before we start, I want to warn you, these cases actually happened. The names have been changed to protect the identities of those involved. Our first story took place in 2021 at the Santa Casa Hospital in a city in inland Sao Paulo. Carlos had been a janitor there for 15 years. He always worked the night shift, from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Carlos knew every hallway, every room, every sound the hospital made at night. But there was one place that always bothered him: the 3rd floor. It was where the old wards were, which had been deactivated for over 10 years. The hallway was long and dark, with only a few lights working. The smell of disinfectant mixed with mold was a constant presence in the air. Carlos avoided that floor whenever possible, but on that Tuesday night, he received a specific order from his supervisor. He needed to go up to the 3rd floor to get some gurneys that would be used the next day. There was no way out of it this time. It was exactly 2:30 a.m. when Carlos took the elevator. The hospital was in total silence, with only the sound of machines echoing through the halls. When the doors opened on the 3rd floor, a draft of cold air hit his face. This was strange, as the hospital always kept the temperature controlled. Carlos turned on his flashlight and started walking down the hallway. His footsteps echoed in an amplified way, as if the sound was multiplying. The gurneys were at the end of the hallway, in the old surgery room. Carlos took a deep breath and started walking, trying to ignore the sensation of being watched. That's when he heard it. A low, almost imperceptible sound, like someone was dragging something heavy across the floor, very slowly. Carlos stopped immediately. The sound also stopped. He waited a few seconds and started walking again. The sound returned, always behind him. His heart started to race. Carlos quickly turned around, pointing the flashlight behind him. The hallway was completely empty. He tried to convince himself that it was just his imagination, maybe the sound of some medical equipment running on another floor. But when he got to the gurney room, Carlos noticed something that made his blood run cold. The door was ajar, and he was sure it had been closed. With trembling hands, he pushed the door open. The room was dark, but his flashlight lit up something that shouldn't have been there. One of the gurneys was in the center of the room, covered with a white sheet. Carlos knew all the gurneys were supposed to be stacked against the wall. He approached slowly. The sheet was perfectly stretched, as if someone was lying underneath it. Carlos reached out a trembling hand, ready to pull the sheet back. But before he could touch it, he heard a slow, deep breath coming from underneath the fabric. He immediately backed away, tripping over his own legs. The flashlight fell to the floor, and for a few seconds the room went completely dark. When he managed to grab the flashlight again, Carlos pointed it at the gurney. The sheet had been removed, and the gurney was empty. But what scared him the most was realizing there were now wet footprints on the floor, leading from the gurney to the room's door. Carlos didn't wait to investigate further. He ran down the hallway, completely ignoring the gurneys he was supposed to get. When he reached the elevator, his hands were trembling so much he could barely press the button. That's when he heard the sound of something being dragged again. This time, the sound came from multiple directions at once, as if multiple gurneys were being moved through the empty hallways. The elevator doors finally opened, and Carlos practically threw himself inside. When he turned to look at the hallway one last time, he saw a tall, dark figure standing at the end of the hallway, watching him in silence. The figure wasn't moving. It just stood there, motionless. The doors closed, and Carlos went straight down to the ground floor. He spent the rest of the night in the main lobby, refusing to go back up. The next day, Carlos reported the incident to his supervisor. He then discovered that the third floor had been an ICU where many patients passed away during an epidemic in the 90s.
Our second story happened at the regional hospital of a city in Rio Grande do Sul. Marina had been working as a nurse on the night shift for 8 years. She knew the routine well, checking on patients, administering medication, and occasionally making rounds through the hospital's deactivated wing. The deactivated wing was on the second floor and had been closed due to a lack of funds. The rooms remained with all their equipment just covered with sheets. Marina always avoided that area, but on that Thursday night, she needed to retrieve a specific piece of equipment that was stored there. It was 3:15 a.m. when she went up the stairs. The hallway of the deactivated wing was completely dark, with only the emergency light flickering at the end. Marina turned on her flashlight and started walking. The silence was absolute, unlike the rest of the hospital where there was always some sound from equipment. The equipment was in room 237, in the middle of the hallway. Marina passed several empty rooms, all with their doors open and equipment covered. When she reached room 237, she noticed something strange. The door was closed, unlike all the other rooms she had passed. Marina slowly turned the doorknob. The door opened with a loud creak that echoed throughout the hallway, breaking the sepulchral silence. Inside the room, everything seemed normal. The hospital bed was in the center, covered with a white sheet, and the equipment was on the sides. Marina found what she was looking for in a cabinet in the corner of the room. But when she turned to leave, she realized the door had closed by itself. She tried to open it, but the doorknob wouldn't budge. Marina pushed hard, but the door seemed to be locked from the outside. That's when she heard a slow and constant beep coming from behind her. Marina turned around and saw that one of the heart monitors had turned on by itself. The screen showed a normal heart rhythm, as if it were monitoring someone, but there was no one connected to the equipment. Marina approached the monitor to turn it off, but when she touched the button, the equipment started emitting a loud and shrill alarm. Other pieces of equipment started to turn on in sequence. The mechanical ventilator, the infusion pump, the oximeter, all functioning as if there were a patient. The room filled with the sounds of medical equipment, creating a disturbing symphony. Marina tried desperately to turn everything off, but nothing responded. That's when she heard a weak voice coming from the bed. "Nurse, nurse." The voice was of an elderly woman, almost a whisper. Marina looked at the bed. The sheet was moving slightly, as if someone was breathing underneath it, but she could see there was no one there. "Please, don't leave me alone." The voice continued, getting clearer. Marina felt as if her legs were made of lead. She tried to open the door again, this time in desperation. She pushed, pulled, and hit it, but nothing worked. She was completely trapped in the room. The equipment continued to run, and now Marina could hear more voices. Several people calling for help, asking for medication, crying in pain. The voices came from all corners of the room, as if there were multiple invisible patients. Marina covered her ears, but the sounds seemed to come from inside her head. Desperate, she started screaming for help, hoping someone on the floor below could hear her. But her own screams mixed with the voices of the patients. Suddenly, all the equipment turned off at the same time. The silence returned instantly, as if someone had flipped a master switch. Marina tried the door one more time, and this time it opened easily. She ran down the hallway without looking back, going down the stairs as fast as possible. When she reached the first floor, Marina was out of breath and in a panic. She told the on-duty supervisor, who went up with her to check. When they returned to room 237, everything was normal. The equipment was turned off and covered, exactly as it should have been. But the supervisor noticed something strange. There were several footprints on the dusty floor of the room, as if multiple people had walked there recently. Marina later found out that the wing had been closed after a hospital infection outbreak that resulted in the death of 23 patients in a single week. Our third and final story happened at the municipal hospital in Belo Horizonte. Roberto had been working as a night security guard for 12 years. His job was to make rounds on the floors, check doors and windows, and make sure everything was secure during the night. Roberto knew every corner of the hospital, every sound, every shadow at night. But one thing disturbed him: the Block B elevator moving alone. He blamed it on age. The elevator was over 20 years old. Friday night, something felt different when he heard it moving. This time, Roberto waited. The doors opened with a groan. Empty cab, but the fourth floor button glowed bright. That floor was closed for years, only storage now. Curious, he stepped inside and pressed the button. The elevator rose slowly. Air turned freezing cold. He saw his breath, hands trembled in darkness. Fourth floor opened, smell of flowers and chemicals. Corridor pitch black. Roberto turned on flashlight. Rooms filled with abandoned beds and dusty machines. Then elevator left, descending without him. Panic grew, stair doors locked tight. Whispers came, soft voices from one room. He approached trembling, peered through crack. Figures sat waiting, translucent in hospital gowns. He stepped on glass, sharp echo rang out. Whispers stopped, footsteps approached door. Terrified, he ran, steps followed behind. Exit door opened. He rushed downstairs, breathless. At lobby, called boss, elevator kept moving. Technician checked logs, 47 trips that night. Fourth floor was palliative care once. Many died there during final hours. Elevator transported patients constantly at night. Roberto learned the tragic history later. Since then, never worked alone again. Always avoided fourth floor completely. Passing Block B still chills him. Those translucent figures haunt him today. These three stories have something in common. They all happened in places where many people spent their final moments of life. Carlos never worked the night shift again. He requested a transfer to the day shift, even though it meant earning less money. Marina continued working as a nurse, but changed hospitals. She said she could never forget the voices she heard that night. Roberto remained at the same hospital, but always avoids working alone. He says he still hears the elevator moving during his rounds. All three employees reported similar sensations: sudden cold, the feeling of being watched, and sounds that had no logical explanation. Experts in paranormal phenomena say that hospitals are places with high concentrations of intense emotional energy. Pain, fear, hope, relief. All these emotions concentrate in these environments, creating what some call psychic impressions. Skeptics argue that these reports can be explained by psychological factors: fatigue, stress, and the naturally tense atmosphere of hospitals. But how do you explain equipment that turned on by itself? Doors that opened and closed? Elevators that operated without commands? Each person who hears these stories must decide for themselves. Are they just coincidences and imagination, or is there something more? What we know is that these three employees never lied about their experiences. They had nothing to gain by making up these stories. In fact, they all suffered consequences: job changes, sleepless nights, and the stigma of being seen as crazy. But they insist that what they experienced was real. And when you hear the details, the sincerity in their voices, it's hard to doubt completely. Perhaps the truth is that there are things in this world that our science still cannot fully explain. Places where the line between life and death is thinner, where energies accumulate and create phenomena that challenge our understanding. If you work in a hospital, especially during the early hours, You've probably felt that different atmosphere these places have. That feeling that you're not completely alone, even when you should be. Those sounds you can't identify. Maybe it's just your imagination, or maybe it's something more. The only certainty is that these experiences deeply mark those who live them. Carlos, Marina, and Roberto never met each other, but they all carry similar memories of those nights that changed their perception of reality. And you? Do you believe there are places where the supernatural manifests? Or do you think everything can be explained by science? Leave your opinion in the comments. And if you've had a similar experience, share it with us. Who knows, your story might become our next video. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you don't miss our next cases. And remember, reality is sometimes stranger than fiction, especially when it comes to places where life and death meet. Until the next video, and be careful walking alone through dark corridors during the early hours. You never know what you might find.